Hi, kids. See that? Pentagram? Yeah. So, today's video. What about Christmas? I got kids, and I've been a witch my whole life. Way before I had kids. What are you gonna do? Not have Christmas? You tell your kids, oh, we don't celebrate Christmas. Oh yeah, this will be really popular. Your kid's gonna really want to follow your footsteps after that one, right? Well, so we witches, we tend to celebrate solstice, the winter solstice. Winter solstice is like the new moon of sun. It's the start of the year, the solar year. The summer solstice is like the full moon of the sun. Definitely different magics to do for that kind of thing. But as our access to information increases, we find out things that I didn't exactly know early on. There's a really cool film called Zeitgeist floating around on the internet, which explains this kind of thing really well. They do suffer a little bit in their ancient Egyptian scholarship. They mess up some of the old Egyptian things. But other than that, a great movie. Zeitgeist, Zeightgist, something like that. Search for it, you'll find it. There's probably like 4 or 5 different versions of it. But the first one's really fascinating. It's 2 parts. The second part's 9/11 conspiracy stuff. If you're into that, I'm sure I've mentioned the video before. I know I mentioned it to my students, but kind of film you can show your average clueless Christian, and unless they just don't want to get it, they get it. They lay it out in these bullet points. It's pretty hard to miss. So, really important thing we learned there. So we know Christmas was totally stolen from the pagans, like all the holidays. There are even Christian factions that do not celebrate the holidays because they recognize that the holidays, in fact, are pagan and are based on pagan seasonal holidays. Everything in Christmas is pagan. The tree, you're bringing a tree in your house, there's that fucking pagan. There's one I always loved, and now I am not a linguistic scholar of world languages, but I was told by somebody that is that there are several Gaelic dialects in ancient Ireland, one used by the Bardic sect of the Druids. I am told, I do not know if this is true, but it fascinates me nonetheless, that in that language, the word fa meant hail, and the word la meant sun. And there was a chant that they used to do, is fa la la, fa la la, fa la 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 ti day, which roughly translates to hail the sun, hail the sun, hail the early sun. Now, to put that back into context with one of the most sung Christmas carols of them all, Deck the Halls with Boughs of Holly, holly being a druid symbol, and being that solstice time is the time that the Holly King defeats the Oak King and reigns until summer. We can see where that came from. Deck the halls with boughs of holly. Fa la la, la la la, la la la. Hail the sun, hail the sun, hail the sun, sun, sun. 'Tis the season to be jolly. Clearly we are the jolly religion and not our adversaries there. We celebrate, we do not celebrate. Ireland is where the wake comes from. It's a celebratory death ritual where you get really drunk and party rather than mourn. Let's see, to the season to be jolly. Don we now our gay apparel. The winter solstice was the night that the Druids changed from their green robes to their white robes, their gay apparel. Sing, oh, fa la 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 la, sun, hail the sun, hail the sun. Sing the ancient Yuletide carol, which we know is the ancient name for a holiday. There is a second verse that hardly anybody ever sings, but I have looked at it, and it's also very druidic. And if that thing that my friend told me is true, that's fucking funny. That's hilarious. That means the Druids, who were allegedly conquered by, by the Romans, by the Christian Romans, who were allegedly conquered, are having their songs sung to this day by people who were their adversaries. St. Patrick went to Ireland to do away with the Druids and several other pagan sects there. And that's just one thing. That's not even where I was going to go with the zeitgeist thing. The zeitgeist thing is what we learned very specifically on the winter solstice, which tends to be December 21st. But in reality, I think a witch should know. A witch is not just a folk magician. A witch needs to know why, where, when, who, how, what. Needs to know the ins and outs of everything. So we need to know, as witches, the winter solstice happens at the moment that the sun enters Capricorn. And that not always on the 21st. It tends to be a little, I think it's usually the 21st actually it's from the 20th to the 22nd. I think that's where solstice can fall in. But most times in my life, it has been on the 21st. But traditionally, on December 21st, the sun in the northern hemisphere, where a lot of us, the descendants of the people who stole this land here in America, came from the northern hemisphere. In the northern hemisphere, on the winter solstice, the sun reaches its lowest point. It dips below the horizon and does not reappear for 3 days. Now, the ancients saw the sun as God, and the belief surrounding that was that on the winter solstice, God died. God died, and 3 days later rises from the grave. So even that they stole from the pagans too. The entire Jesus mythos, and we know that the Jesus mythos was attached to the old pagan mythos by a pope and at the Council of Nicaea to give legitimacy to the story of Jesus. But the story, and especially if you watch Zeitgeist, the entire story had been told about every major god from the dawn of time, down to the traveling around with 12 apostles, working miracles, even turning water into wine. Every piece of that was somebody else before that. And matter of fact, the entire story was Moses' story before it was Jesus' story. But then they go back, and all the way back to like Mithras, and I think they even go back to ancient Samaria, and the same thing. There's a main god associated with the sun, dies at the winter solstice, rises 3 days later. And where does that bring us? It brings us with the knowledge of knowing that they stole Christmas from us. When we celebrate Christmas, or when we're forced to celebrate Christmas with our Christian parents, we can be snickering under our breath, especially if they break out a Yule log or something, which unfortunately is sometimes a log of cheese. I've seen a log of cheese that's called a Yule log. So the pagan beliefs always exist. They're just quite oftentimes really bastardized and plasticized. But where does that bring us then? So if we're pagans, and we're witches, whatever you want to call yourself, but you're celebrating these seasonal holidays, and we just celebrate the winter solstice, we're just celebrating God's death. Now, most of the high holidays, and the solstice is not one of the high holidays, but most of the high holidays in paganism were twofold. Like there's Samhain and the Day of the Dead the next day. There's Beltane Eve and Beltane. Very different holidays that go well together. They're twofold, two parts to all the main holidays. So I am advocating to help you through this shit, deal with this stuff every year. We should celebrate both. Shouldn't we celebrate the death of God and then the birth of God? Because in our spiritual and religious beliefs, death is but a doorway to new life. We believe that. That's why we believe in reincarnation. If we're going to reincarnate, aren't the gods going to reincarnate too? As above, so below. As the universe, so the soul. So, you can tell everybody that I told you. Uncle Birch is advocating that you celebrate both the winter solstice and Xmas. I will not say Christ Mass. Don't believe it. No reason to believe it. I am not one of those increasingly dominating types of Americans that cannot live with facts. And what we have is really no facts about Jesus. We have a lot of facts against the Jesus mythos. We have a lot of facts against everything that the church ever said. And really no facts to support them, except in the fact that everything in their book was stolen from somebody else. Entire Bible, all the stories in the Bible were told by cultures before the Bible, and before that, and before that, and before that, and before that. The Christians just, maybe it was the Jews. Jews took them and made it their book, and then the Christians continued that idea. And maybe that was not the original idea. Maybe these people were like the bards and just cataloging history, and it somehow became a separate sect, claiming ownership and lineage to those stories, to those characters, even though the Christians, the Muslims, and the Jews all have the same people in their books doing pretty much the same thing. Yet they fight and they disagree, and most of the world's wars have been fought through these three main factions that basically are reading the same book. Certain variations. There's definitely a disagreement about Jesus. Only the Christians hold the belief in Jesus. They do. The Jews don't hold that. The Muslims don't hold that. They all have their own messiahs, their own prophets. The Jews' messiah didn't come yet. The Muslims was Muhammad. They're all the same book because these are ancient tales from ancient cultures that came way before, and none of these people actually own them. So I'm saying you should celebrate both. I'm going to celebrate both. Got to celebrate both. Like I said, I got a kid. Oh no, we don't celebrate Christmas. I remember the first couple of years of my daughter's life, we were too busy with Samhain to get any trick-or-treating done. It's not going to make our beliefs very popular amongst the kids. They're not going to grow up and want to do that, those things to their kids. Yeah, exactly. So, basically that's what I'm saying. The sun dies on the solstice. The sun rises on Xmas, the 25th, or roughly there around. I'm saying celebrate both. 'Tis the season to be jolly. Why not be jolly twice in the month? Makes perfect sense. Remember, we celebrate, not celibate. And if you do, that's your thing. But I wouldn't impose that on anybody else. There's people that have reasons for being celibate or declaring celibacy for a short amount of time till they figure out their shit or whatever. But the idea of celibacy being imposed upon us by religions as some sort of moral ethic that makes us better and nice people is absolute bullshit. And there's nothing, even the God in the Bible told him to be fruitful and multiply. Likewise, there's nothing in the Bible against drinking, but yet we're told that that's some moral code that Christians have to follow. Nothing against drugs, but you got to be, clean and sober, and not be having sex except with your spouse, and only then to procreate. Having those ideas imposed upon us by a religion, no, I don't buy that. Because here's the thing: a witch thinks. A witch doesn't just react. A witch doesn't just go with what everybody else says. You should be thinking outside the box. Think of everything differently. And for my whole lifetime, I've never heard a pagan advocate this. I've heard a couple pagans adopt Jesus as a deity. I don't really know how that works, but whatever works for them. But I've never heard anybody say this. I think we should celebrate both the death and the life of our God, our sun God. What the fuck would we be without our sun God? It'd be cold. Shit wouldn't grow. We'd be dead. Really, we would have never, the oceans would have been frozen, and so we would have never crawled out of the ocean and learned to be land-dwelling mammals. So, thanks, son. All right, that's pretty much what I have to say. So, happy solstice, Merry Xmas, and even though New Year's was on Samhain, Happy New Year.